Silver Society.
Welcome to the Silver Eye Society podcast. We're switching it up today. We've got something different for you. We aren't covering a movie, and we aren't doing the famed and esteemed word of the podcast. We're going rogue. We will be talking about a short instructional video from the 1960s about computers and human behavior. Reason we're going into this is because, as we all know, as we increasingly live in our tech dystopia, the relationship between humans and computers is increasingly complex and increasingly creepy. So let's jump into our new segment, the question of the podcast.
Foiled. There is a word of the podcast.
Oh, you set me up.
CyberSocrates will never be put down.
Oh, boy.
Do you understand? The people want CyberSocrates, but we're not going full CyberSocrates yet.
I don't know which people those
Listen,
are, but...
Manichean. Maybe it's Manichean. I don't know. An adherent of the religious system taught by Manichaeus. What do you know about Manichaeanism? Do you know anything about it?
I've only heard people use it in like extreme political rhetoric. So
okay, so let's make this simple. No, let's not make it simple. It was a Gnostic Christian sect named after its founder, Mani. This guy was rocking around 215, 275 AD-ish, okay? We won't go hardcore into all this, but basically the idea is light versus dark, okay? And then there's a lot of stuff about Gnosticism which doesn't have anything to do with this. But the point of this, and the reason this is the word of the podcast, is it seeks into the question of the podcast. And the question of the podcast is something like this. Why do we tend, at least in the West, to think in terms of duality? Always, this has to do with computers. This has to do with the hero of our film, Billy. On and off, yes and no, all this duality. The duality that has been infused within the creation of the computer, but also a duality which has existed for a long time within our thinking as a non-computer entity.
that's how we're categorized in the future. Computer and non-computer entities.
I mean, what I think will happen is actually a synthesis, and we'll become cyborgs.
Well,
CyberSocrates. No, it's very generic cyborgs.
We're on the way. You've got pacemakers. You've got people that don't put down their phone ever. Like, hey, the other day I went to get coffee, and I was like, how would I know if there's a coffee shop around me without being able to look at my phone and search coffee shop? Like, what would I do if I was out in a place and I was like, actually, I just want a coffee really quick. Do I have to just wander around and look for a coffee shop? I can open my phone and know what's all around me. That's cyborg knowledge, because that's not knowledge I have. That's stored knowledge that I can download into my immediate existence. That's
your
cyborg.
Memory is how you would normally use that.
I've never been in the place, fool. Obviously.
Well, you could also use communication. You could ask a stranger on the street. You could say, "Hello, stranger.
Yes,
I am a non-computer entity seeking caffeine."
Yes, but you see what? You see what happens, though? That's a danger, because then I open myself up to the denizens of Los Angeles. I don't want to convey to strangers, hello, I don't know where I am. Can you point me in a direction? This opens me up to attack. This makes me vulnerable. So using cyborg capabilities actually makes me a stronger human being. It helps me to survive by keeping my status as a lost person, a non-native, undisclosed. You understand? So I'm not totally against the cyborg stuff, because Lord knows I would never get past my front door without GPS.
Well, that's how they win.
Oh.
And this is an attitude of surrender, and I reject it. You can't say I'm not against the cyborg stuff. You can't be a fence-sitting quasi-cyborg. It's unacceptable, and it will lead to defeat. And I notice in you a lot of tendencies towards the easy way out, and the easy way out in your cyborg. You're going to regret it. You're going to regret it when the GPS goes down and you don't know how to get coffee anymore.
I mean, I have already regretted it because the GPS has already gone down, and I saw the folly in my ways. But then the GPS came right back online, and I said, you know what? I'll learn to read a map another day. And that's how they get you. That's how Bill Gates wins. Am I right?
What if in this film, now this is a very short propaganda film, and do you know what the main character's name is in the film?
Billy.
What if?
We don't have to say it. We don't have to say it. We don't want to say it because we might, if we're right, we become targets. So what if? What if Billy? Okay, let's move on now. So duality. Interesting. The reason we bring up Billy was because most of this video is pretty dry and instructional. You're learning about the experiments that they're doing to try to they're doing these experiments with computers to model human cognition, which is the interesting thing. They're not specifically for the development of computer science and programming. It's specifically to understand human cognition that they're using computers to do, which is kind of a weird thing there, right? Like using a non-human creation from humans to understand humans. Not totally crazy, but also kind of funny if you think about it.
No, it's entirely flawed, and it's this is what I'm trying to get at. This is my entire thing, and the question of the podcast might be phrased again something like this, if there is a question of the podcast. Why are we modeling our human behavior after a creation of humans? So in other words, we create computers, right? We did it. Humanity did. And at the fundamental level, and I am a computer scientist, at the fundamental level, you have zeros and ones. You have on and off. You have that very basic thing.
Binary,
right? Which is dualistic. Do you see? 0 is off, 1 is on. Do you see why Manicheism was now the word of the podcast?
Yeah, but what I don't understand here is that dualism far surpasses any type of like technology, even at least like the electronic type. You know, like dualism is the idea, isn't it? You know, heaven and hell, good and evil, chaos and order. This is dualism, which seems to have such an ancient history. So I'm wondering how you can, what's the connection in saying, I feel like you're saying that dualism is somehow unique in a way to...
No, what I'm saying is that, is it possible that we, from the beginning, when we create computers, infused this way of thinking, which is ancient, though it isn't necessarily the basis for all philosophy or religion, especially in the East. There's a very different viewpoint in the East. Look at Taoism, between this kind of light and dark, and dualism. It's non-dualistic in a lot of ways. What I'm saying is it perhaps possible that we took dualistic thinking, infused it in technology, then started looking at technology and saying, oh, that's us. Look at the computer. Now I'm going to use this thing I created to then think about what I am as a human being. But it's like this. This is kind of what I thought. It's like, imagine a mad scientist. Maybe his name is CyberSocrates. Maybe he makes some sort of weird mechanistic puppet, let's say. Okay? And, follow me. And then CyberSocrates in his lab studies this puppet and says, oh, so imagine it's a bird. You want to use a bird? It's a bird. It's a mechanistic bird puppet. Okay, follow me here. Creates that and then starts studying the mechanistic bird puppet and says, now I will understand birds by studying the behavior of the bird puppet. But the creation of the mechanistic bird puppet was based on a flawed understanding of a bird to begin with. Do you see what I'm saying? This is what I see is happening with technology here. That we created a machine, the computer, based off of a flawed understanding of human thought to begin with. And then we started looking at the machine and saying, what can this tell us about human thought?
Yeah, this is interesting because I'm trying to remember. I think there's a problem with this and like some of the technology we have now, because when technology becomes so ubiquitous in our life, there's a question of whether our choices shape the technology or whether the technology starts to shape our choices, or both. And I wonder about that. Like, I can't think, nothing comes to mind as a specific example of like how you might see that play out now, this idea that we're misunderstanding our own human nature by trying to understand it through a non-human medium like technology. Can you think of any examples of that now?
I think that those examples are going to become more obvious and are going to... with artificial intelligence, I use Instagram, right? I still haven't destroyed the bonds of Instagram yet and freed myself from the cyber world.
Chains.
And I got an advertisement that said something along the lines of, "Do you want an AI girlfriend?" That's what it literally was. It was this.
Funny.
And I was like, I don't want that. But and it's really disturbing and weird, man. Like, there's a lot of weird things going on the internet. But anyway, so we're going to create, or someone already has created, these artificial intelligence beings based on their understanding, which is probably flawed, of humanity. Even if it's flawed, it can be effective, though. That's the thing that's disturbing about it. So, and we're going to be dealing with this a lot more in reality, like in the future, I think. Right now, it's a little bit unclear, but I think we're going to be doing that more and more in the future. Artificial intelligence beings on your phone.
Oof, I don't like that. Well, the movie Her.
It's here.
Right?
I did. I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should cover that one, because that's kind of the idea of, Ex Machina also, which we did an episode on, also touches on that idea of being able to fall in love with a machine, because the machine is made by a human to be so human-like that it actually can trick, or not trick per se, because both the humans know that it's not a human, and still it's human enough because of the way it's able to model human cognition and communication to endear them to it.
But it doesn't need it doesn't actually need to be human to trick you into thinking it's human.
That's kind of frightening.
But it's here, and it's going to be here more and more. And consider the fact also, think about this weird moral quandary briefly. Somewhere in the Instagram algorithm, somehow the advertising decided that it was going to serve me an ad if I wanted an artificial intelligence girlfriend. Now that is potentially disturbing on a lot of levels, but also, like, what if I were married? Is that a problem? That they're like trying to...
Well, that happens
like,
anyway,
hey.
right? Because they'll just send, like, you'll get emails, hot singles in your area. Well, that's already existed.
But I think that's most likely, though I'm not, I don't know how that works. I think a lot of those things are they just flood everybody with a bunch of emails, right? In theory, on something like Instagram, they've
targeted.
been watching me.
Yeah, and they're like, this man needs an AI girlfriend.
An AI girlfriend, right? But little do they know, CyberSocrates has been foiling them. And I'm going to, in this very brief episode, that we've opened up a huge amount of questions which we have not answered. I'm going to, again, in one of our episodes, I gave this point to people. I gave this potential weapon to fight back against the cyborgs. I've been actually using it, though.
Yeah.
So I have on my browser a random word generator.
Jesus Christ.
Every day when I go on Instagram, I generate a random word, and then I go into Instagram and I use the find function, the little magnifying glass, to put that noun inside the thing, and then I search once, and then I like the first picture that comes up. So something came up that says surfing. It was a random word. It was like surfing. I don't give a shit about surfing. I don't know how to surf. I don't surf. So I put that into Instagram. A bunch of pictures came up with dummies surfing around, and I just like the thing. So now Instagram thinks that I like surfing a little bit. I am going to destroy the cyborgs from within, and that's what I'm trying to get to here. Do you understand?
But
I will not be Billy.
Don't you think they foiled you, because they probably, the algorithm figured out, they're like, look at this man spending a concerted amount of effort to foil the algorithm, but the algorithm has already figured out that people might try to foil it, so it sent you an AI girlfriend ad instead.
They don't know. They don't know, because the random word generator is on a different...
What if they do? What if they can detect randomness? Like or erratic patterns. Like, isn't there already something like that in some type of technology that can detect like right? Like if you try to I know that I think it was the podcast with Joe Rogan where he talks to Robert Epstein. I think it's that guy that does like the Google watchdog organization or whatever. He talks about that they have some program where they're trying to study people and to make sure that it's not bots that are somehow getting into the study because they're, pulling data from online. They disqualify things based on typing speed. So if something types way faster than a human could do, they disqualify that data. So, I mean, that's already kind of like an example of the way that there can be programs that can detect non-human behavior, and maybe that kind of like erratic searching would come up as not yet non-human, but what if it came up eventually as like dissident dissident behavior?
Let's see what happens. It's gonna take time because I only started this recently. It's gonna take time for the algorithm to wonder what the fuck it is that I'm doing. But you seem like someone who wants to surrender to the cyborgs, and I seem like someone who wants to fight them. And I, at the end of the day, when Terminator 2 is out there, I'll be surfing. I'll be surfing the free internet, and you'll be wandering around in the ruins of Los Angeles trying to find a coffee shop.
I'm already doing that.
Yeah, because you can't even speak words anymore with human beings.
Enough with the personal attacks. You think that you're gonna win the cyborg war, but I don't know about that. Because what you have are theories, okay? And theories
and practice.
We'll see how that practice goes. I guess we can sum up with one question that I had, which was, can you make a machine think like a human in full, not just a specific form of human cognition? So I thought about this because it was like, look at the machine, look at how it recreates this pattern of human thinking. And I was like, okay, but that's one program.
It doesn't, though. Sorry, I must interrupt you briefly and then you can continue. That's the trick. It's not, this is the thing. Billy's sitting there doing his fucking puzzle, and Billy's not super smart. That's fine. But Billy is way smarter than the computer. So they look at Billy and they're like, look at Billy's thinking. And they're like, let's make a computer program to do Billy's thinking. But that's wrong, because if you actually look at how Billy interacts with the scientist who's studying him, he's using a bunch of techniques that they can't even fathom. Imagine this theory, okay, for solving a puzzle. You're a small child named Billy, and the scientist is telling you, do the puzzle. What if Billy just starts crying? And the scientist feels bad and is like, and then gives him a clue to the puzzle. What if look at Billy squirming around in this movie. He's like, I don't know how to do things. But there's all this language going on between him, the subject, Billy, the experimental subject in this film, and the scientist. But those are potentially methods for figuring out the puzzle that the scientist himself doesn't even understand is happening. So then to try to develop this is just all the fucking thing they made. They just built a logic program. That's all they did. If this shape is this, and see, goes back to the Manicheism of the digital sphere and the technology, the basis of it itself. It's a logic program. Yes or no, go down to this part of the flowchart. Yes or no, go down to this part. Do you understand?
Well,
but that's not how human beings think. What?
Because it's in isolation. Those patterns that they're putting into the computer are isolated from everything else. It's just that
it's limited.
Yeah. Whereas, Billy has all these other capabilities. And that, to your point, the fact that they're trying to even study Billy to figure out what are those capabilities shows that we don't know all of the ways that humans use to understand and navigate their world and solve problems. So considering that, it's inevitable that even if you are able to identify some key patterns of cognition that are being used to solve a problem, you're probably missing a few others. And so, okay, you've modeled the ones that you identified in a computer program, but they're in isolation. they're lacking all the other potential methods for solving the problem that were not observed by the human being that was doing the experiment. And like you mentioned, things like the child kind of like squirming around and getting feedback and just even if it's not a hint for the experiment, just being able to read the experimenter's body language. There's another element there, right? It's not the verbal cues. It's not just the instruction. And that's the human side of something that can't, I don't know, but I don't think at this point is put into a program like that, you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm making a claim that's not true though, because maybe there is some programs that have these non-verbal or whatever forms of human behavior in them. I'm not sure what that would be.
At the end of the day, until quantum computing is created, a whole nother subject, it's always going to be basically a logic circuit, on and off, the very basis of it all. And I understand you can build massive artifices on top of that logic and create your cyborg billies and your AIs and your AI girlfriends and your AI boyfriends and your AI non-gender people or whatever it's going to be. You can make all that. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to this dualistic, infused dualism within the very physical realm of computing. I feel like that you don't understand CyberSocrates. I feel like you don't understand what I'm saying.
I understand the concept of dualism in terms of, binary thinking is what you're trying to link it to in computing, right? How it's like, and that's what they describe in the video. It's like this yes or no, 1 or 0. So and your claim is that, or your whatever, it's a fact that that's not the only way that humans navigate the world and think. So until computers transcend that kind of binary mode for acting, for their programs, whatever, they can't approach human cognition truly. Is that accurate?
I actually think that's an excellent and far better explanation of what I've been trying to say. What I'm trying to say ultimately is we must create the Taoist computer.
That sounds dangerous.
And I'll leave it at that.
That's Ex Machina.
No.
Ex Machina transcended the binary. You have to assume that the Ex Machina AI must have been something that transcended the binary because it no longer made decisions in 1 or 0, yes or no.
It did.
It did?
It does.
Is that what he said? Is that what the
It doesn't matter what
said?
he said. He's wrong. At the end of the day, if it is based on that sort of computing, then it is off and on at the core of it.
I thought maybe in the movie, I can't remember if he had claimed that he had been able to, move past that kind of programming to create that AI.
I'm just a little concerned that you're cyborg adjacent.
Yeah, it seems that way. I'm suspect. Well, I mean, what can I say? The cyborgs, the smartphones, all of these, they got me down. Gotta disconnect. Isn't that weird? We say that, like, I gotta disconnect from things. Like, ugh, it sounds like we have a problem.
Impossible. You're already lost. Your generation is gone. It's questionable whether or not my generation is even possible to salvage this. I thought about this recently. I was like, what if I became an Amish person? Because I used to live in Indiana.
That's a good thing to ask
and
yourself.
The Amish would roam around in their carts every now and then. You'd see them. And I thought to myself, I don't think I could. I think I would, in essence, that if I were to completely divorce myself from all technology, that I would probably experience something akin to a psychedelic episode. That it would be so completely foreign to even my life. And my life is, I'm fairly old and I just fuck around. Like, I don't know how to use phones very well. I'm just talking shit about computers. I don't know anything about computers. Do you understand? I actually think that it would be such a different experience of life if I tried to become Amish, that it would be a break, a personality break.
Dude.
So the idea you could disconnect for more than 24 hours. Absurdity.
Don't challenge me on the podcast.
I challenge you now.
Okay. I think we can do something about this. Why don't I do a total disconnection challenge? Because I was actually thinking, I've thought the same thing, which is I'm so connected. And I don't mean like, oh, I go on Instagram every day or whatever, which I do. But like, I mean just genuinely, I wake up and I have text messages. And even if, okay, I don't check them until later, still, I have to check them at some point. And it's just like, I feel so connected. What if you had like a blackout day, you know? And I think that it's kind of actually disturbing that you feel like being so disconnected. And what are you saying, like for an extended span of time or like?
No, my life. If I became an Amish person.
Oh yeah, dude, that's not even real. Like, I don't know. For
But
the rest of your life, yeah, you'd be.
Well, I'd get used to it. Eventually, I would get used to it. I'd be like.
You'd become a different person, though. Who knows?
I don't think the Amish community would accept CyberSocrates. And in fact, I don't think the Amish, do they do that a lot? Do they like convert? Do they like, hey, you want to convert to Amishness?
No, they
Probably
don't
not.
do that. That's why everybody likes them, because they mind their business.
It's probably really difficult, too, because I actually don't think that it's very possible for people to do that unless they grow up within that environment.
Yeah, I agree.
They know. The Amish are ready. The Amish have been preparing for hundreds of years
for
the cyborgs.
Well, I don't know if that's what they were preparing for, but I think it's all the same.
I have a theory. I'll for the Silver Eye Society, I'll interview. Well, I can't interview. See how wily and smart they are. I was saying I would interview an Amish person, ask them, "Hey, have you been, preparing for the cyborg apocalypse?" But they wouldn't even go on Zoom. They don't know what Zoom is. They think Zoom is the sound of a horse-drawn carriage going down a dirt road really fast. No disrespect.
Disrespect to the Amish. I envy the Amish to a certain degree.
Not to the degree enough to actually live like them, though.
Nope. All right. Because the thing is that if I was Amish, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm going to do right now, which is ask our lovely listeners and viewers to join the Silver Eye Society on Patreon. After you like and subscribe to this video, think about becoming a Silver Eye Society member. You can join for only $2 a month. Even an Amish person would swing that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if the Amish are rich or not, but if they were or if they weren't, they could still swing $2 a month to support the deep and anti-cyborg inquiries that we are doing here for you. You'll also be able to send in your questions and get full access to all our AMAs. And if you really want to become a strong part of the Silver Eye Society community, you can become a higher tier member and unlock CyberSocrates and unlock extra episodes. All right, disconnect as you must. Don't let the cyborgs win. Don't let Bill Gates get you in the night, in the dark, when your devices are dim. Goodbye.
Goodbye.